Hi everyone, my name is Melissa van Dijk, and in today's video I want to talk about whether moisturizer can cause acne. Now this is something really interesting because if acne is caused by pressure from fluid shifts, then moisturizer becomes a very interesting topic. Because that could explain why many people describe breaking out from essentially every moisturizer they use. Now, you may use a moisturizer because your skin is dry, irritated, flaky or damaged. And instead of calming down, it gets worse. And the usual explanation is that the moisturizer must have clogged your pores, right? And for one product or a very heavy ingredient, I can understand why people would explain it that way. If something sits very heavily on the skin, then yes, I can see how someone would imagine it creating a blockage and causing a local reaction. But I do not think that explanation works anymore when someone says that almost every moisturizer breaks them out. Because at that point, it becomes unlikely that every single product is causing the exact same problem through a completely different ingredient. I mean, unless you assume there is some universal trigger ingredient in every one of them. And I was thinking about this quite a lot before I discovered the sodium-potassium issue I had with my acne, which is connected to internal fluid shifts happening. And when I look at moisturizer through that lens, it makes much more sense. Because then the problem is not the individual moisturizer. The problem is what moisturizers do to the skin as a category. They change the water environment of the skin. That is literally the point of it. It reduces water loss, it keeps more water in the upper layers, and it changes how soft or flexible the surface feels. And if you use it in the right situation, that can be helpful. But if the skin is already swollen, irritated, reactive, or holding on to fluid, then holding even more water in the upper layers can change the pressure state of the skin. The surface can become more hydrated, but also more swollen. The skin can feel softer, but also heavier. And instead of fluid moving smoothly, it can start to feel trapped. So in this theory, moisturizer is not causing acne because it is simply clogging the skin. It is causing a reaction because it shifts the local fluid balance. And when that shift creates too much pressure in a skin environment that is already reactive, what happens is pretty simple. The skin tries to correct it. And that correction can show up as bumps, whiteheads, redness, irritation, or even acne-like inflammation. So when someone says every moisturizer breaks me out, I think that is entirely possible. Because if the moisturizer is applied in a state where the skin is already swollen, irritated, holding onto fluid, or basically already under pressure, then it is possible that every moisturizer or hydrating product creates the same kind of reaction. Not because the moisturizer is creating the problem from nothing, but because it is adding more water retention into an area that already had a fluid pressure problem. And that would also explain why the amount matters so much. A very thin layer might be tolerated, but a thicker layer, a heavier cream or a more occlusive product can create too much of a shift at once. So the result is that the skin holds more water, the surface changes, and then the pressure builds locally, and then the skin reacts. So the problem in that moment is not necessarily that the moisturizer is bad. But the problem is that the skin cannot tolerate the fluid shift that moisturizer creates in that state. And I think that possibility needs to be considered. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!